Thank you very much for all these introductions. I see we have 40 minutes, so without any further, just to set the context, I was just recalling that in 1998, the Christian Science Monitor ran a headline on the front page. It said, the rise of the techno coolie, India clerks for the world. It was the time these back offices were being set up. And the huge article complimented Indians and India on their grasp of the English language, where they were able to pick up, record, and edit vast materials, both in medical and other engineering meetings, professions, business meetings, and play it back within 10 or 12 hours. It made no reference at all to the literary products of the English language, the impact it had on India, and of course, not a single word about the huge tradition of translations we've had. Of course, for many years, for print in India is not as long as our wonderful oral traditions. So there is that. There is the colonial presence of a language which we've actually, we bent it like Beckham, you can say. We've made it our own. There are people who do all their reading in English. There's the wonderful multilinguality, certainly bilinguality in nearly every Indian. So this has, when printing came, and of course the two arms of colonization, which was the English language and evangelization, and the huge contribution of the missionaries, which was dictionary preparation, setting up a printing presses, education for the masses, because education for the ordinary person is really what set our modern literature in progress. And we're going to be talking about contemporary modern literature, not so much classical. Sadly, one of our star writers missed the flight this morning, Imayam, leading writer in Tamil. We'll be talking about Tamil. Taking Tamil to the world is one of the missions of the state, and we are working towards that. But here we have a translator, Professor Prasad, who has not only translated, but he's taught translation. And there's Salma, but I would like to start with Prasad because I want to ask him whether his academic training and all the theorization, how much it has influenced him as a translator. Because many of my early translators were academics, and they all said that when they started to translate, all the theories flew out of their heads, and it didn't influence them at all. So since Prasad has translated both Imayam and Salma, and one other point before I hand over to him, the translation of the speech or the thoughts of educated people is one thing, but the thoughts of people who had no education, orality, have only that vocabulary, carrying that through two filters. That is the original language in which it was published, and then into English, which all of us know it fails at many points, it breaks down at many points. But nevertheless, the translator will continue. I always say the translator is like the bumblebee. The bumblebee's huge body and very slight wings, it doesn't know that it can't fly, but it still flies. So, dear Mr. Bumblebee, please.
I'm assuming this is on. I have to do nothing to this. It's perfect. They can hear. They can hear it. Right. I'm glad to be introduced as a bumblebee. I have lost weight recently, but I used to be quite massive once upon a time. The first question, many of you who want to translate would have at some point thought about how does one train to be a translator? How does one translate? It's like being a writer. You can just write if you want to. You can do a creative writing course if you want to. But if you want to be a writer, the first advice most writers will give you is to read. They will tell you to read, and then write, and then edit. Right? So the read business is to see what works, how do people structure, how do they write longer stories, how do they write shorter stories, how do they write poetry, what forms. To learn all that, you read. You don't need to do a class, you just have to read and understand and analyze on your own. And then you write, because by that time you find your voice, you see. And why do you edit? Because you also try and check out what works for you, what works for what you want to say. I think doing a class does the same for you. You learn to read, you learn to analyze, you learn to critique, and most importantly, you learn to self-critique. Self-critique, right? To critique your own writing. I think same thing. So that is, in a sense, learning the theory. But theory does not come out of a vacuum. Theory comes from practice. The translators, the translation theorists who don't translate are no theorists at all, right? A creative writing instructor who does not write creatively is no instructor. That's no course to do, really speaking. Then you just do a criticism course. Don't do a creative writing course. So when you teach translation theory, and this is my answer to you, Mini, when you teach translation theory, what you practice with your students all the time and what you yourself do, whether you publish it or not, though you should, is to translate all the time. Because every theoretical position can be seen and talked about only on the basis of your own translations, of practice. So my translation theory course is always called translation theory and practice courses. So everybody translated for every class and in every class and critiqued each other's translations. So in a sense, to go the next step, when people say when I start translation theory goes out of my head, it perhaps means they didn't practice translation before. But having said that, not wanting to critique fellow translators, it also means that let's make it easier for an audience, right? So tell them you don't need theory really to translate, which is correct as I started off. You don't need to do any classes to write either. But having said that, if you know your theory, if you know your analysis, if you know your forms of literature, etc., it informs your writing, it informs your translation. All right? So it is what most theorists would call co-constitutional, right? So in effect, your translation theory analyzes, describes other people's translations and ways of approaching them, but they also inform the way you translate. So there are decisions, there are things you do which have come out of your readings of translations and understanding of translation theory, which sometimes goes to the background. You do it, but it's ingrained in you. Let me share my favorite theory, translation theory. And I think everybody here will understand that should be everybody's favorite translation theory. It's called Minimax theory. Not after your name, Mini, but Minimax. Minimum effort, maximum results. This is what we all want, right? In everything we do, minimum effort, maximum results. What does that actually mean? It's talking about translators, talking to translators. This theory comes sort of talking to practicing translators to say, how do they go about translating long books? How do they do a novel? And most translators said, look, there are parts of a novel, there are dialogues, there's passages that come very easily in translation. Because perhaps I've done things like that before. So it's established, I know how to translate. I will not take too much time over it. I will not waste my effort on it. I'll just translate. But wherever I have to pause, a difficulty arises, I will pay attention there. My maximum effort goes into translating the difficult stuff. The easy stuff, once I established it, I will not bother. So this Minimax is something that informs my translation. When I start, I take a long time, as Salman knows, and Imayam would have been here, and I said, yes, sir, you take a long time. All right? I take a long time to translate. But the long time is really spent on rereading the original text, trying to understand my own position on it, my interpretation of it, to get it clear, to understand everything the writer said. But when I'm translating, actually, I whiz through. I do a lot of it very fast. But then there are parts of it, portions of it that I have not translated. I go back and translate them. Right. So that's got part of the answer as well.
Thank you. Different people have different approaches to translation. Martha Selby says that she first, since we're talking about taking things across the oceans, she says she writes out in Tamil every single line to make sure she's got everything right, doesn't miss things, and then she does a very literal translation, again, to make sure she doesn't miss anything, and then she starts to polish and edit her own language. Another translator, well, two of them actually, P.C. Ramakrishna and Malini Seshadri, who both translated for the TNTB. You know what they do? If I ask them for a synopsis of the work before they begin, they say, no, you won't get it from me. You can go to Wikipedia, you will ask somebody else for it. I want to, they don't read the book, for whether it's a novel or a biography, autobiography. They go page by page because they say, we want to convey in our translation the excitement, the surprises, the things that embedded in the text. Whereas if I read it 3 or 4 times, that temperature will dip. It's the first time I've heard that, because what we heard earlier was that people read it and read it and read it. Kuppasamy, who was translated into Tamil, The God of Small Things, said he read nothing else for a whole year. He felt he had become Estapan. And in fact, Arundhati Roy's inscription in his book is, to my Tamil Estapan. So there are different attitudes to translation. But taking it across into a culture, into a reading culture which is not used to our languages, that is a massive effort. It's one of the most fatiguing things of the human brain, to keep moving between two languages. I'd like to go to Salma now, primarily a poet who went through lots of struggles. Salma, have you ever tried working with your translator, working with line by line poetry? Have you ever tried giving a first draft in English, perhaps, or any other language, because it's gone into more languages than English? I'd like Salma to answer that question. And since you've had 2 translations of your most famous book, which reached the Crossword Award shortlist, and everyone thought actually it would win the award, I'd like you to talk about your experience working with your translators. What made you feel comfortable? What made you feel uncomfortable? Did you just let it go and wait for the final product? Or were you anxiously, like a parent waiting for the birth of a child, waiting to see stage by stage? And did you worry about there are some very particular passages. By the way, some of your passages were brilliant, the retranslation, but some I didn't like much. But that doesn't matter at all, because it's only my opinion. Salma, please.
My novel translated, same novel translated by one lady translator, and now Prasad sir is translated recently. As a writer, we need to translate our writings, our works. It's a wonderful thing, but we don't know how it goes on. When my novels mostly translated by short stories, also translated by women translators. Sometimes the people asking me how a man can translate your works. Really, they knows my writings about women issues, feminist writing. They wanted to know how it possible. But yesterday, one phone call I got from Marathi Sandeep Patil. He called me, Madam, I am Sandeep Patil calling you. I was strike, oh, Sandeep Patil, the cricketer name, I remember that time. Who are you? I asking him. He said, I am from Maharashtra. I read your novel halfway. I finished now, but I was struck on this translation and the story. It is very amazing work you done. And the translation is most important thing. Some kind of problem is there because their own language, Tamil is a wonderful language, ancient language. We could not bring everything in English or other languages. It's very difficult. But Prasad sir working very hard. When the people are translators calling me, some kind of problem is there. They could not understand because the Muslim community, the village, slang, everything is there. No, they sometimes they could not understand. They called us me. What is the meaning of this? Then I can describe everything. Once one translator translated my poem, my poem finished. My vagina opens. It finished like that. But the translator translated my legs open. She could not, she had some kind of hesitation inside, inconfusion, maybe some kind of problem. She could not translate the one, that words. Then I said, how can you, the poem is not completed now. How can you translate like this? No, no, this is good, she said. But these kind of problems never happened with Prasad sir. He done very well job. Really, I'm very happy. Today, Chandrahas Sautri, he sent a message. This is very fresh and very good translation. He said the message to me. Yes, translation is always difficult, but some people, they are working very hard like him. That we are happy about that.
Thank you. One or two things Prasad insists on keeping in his thought. See, in Tamil we say, when we say, I'm leaving now, you don't say, I'm going. That's it. The poet, I will go, and you don't say, I'm going, because it means you may not come back. So once or twice I saw that in his book, and I thought, only a Tamilian or a Malayali will understand this, because it just says, okay, we'll come, and they leave. So, it looks a bit odd. But
Bengalis will also understand that.
Yeah. Huh?
Bengalis will also understand.
Bengalis might understand, yeah. Well, most people, because most Indians. But non-Indian might have some difficulty with that, saying that, hey, what is this guy saying here? So we have lots of problems like that, carrying our writers into foreign language. I'd like to ask Dr. Sarwan to comment on this, because he's been in this field for a very long time, an expert on the Kural, which can be endlessly retranslated. For every 5 or 6 years, someone comes out with a new version. Just before that, I want to say that, we're talking about the same book being translated, the same text being translated by a man and by a woman. Some years ago, the University of Manchester was about to close down its language department, English department. And the only way they could survive was to call themselves the Department of Language Engineering, because it's an engineering university. They sent round a query, a sheet to publish us at that time. This was early 2000, 2001, saying that, would you ask your translators to fill up this form? And it said, male or female, and this and that. And it also asked for sexual preferences. We said, we're trying to study the way the same text is translated by people across the spectrum. There's that too. Just like you would have, if you look at illustrations in magazines, but now, of course, AI is going to replace all artists. The way a woman is drawn, the way a man is drawn, illustrated by a male artist and a woman artist, you will see that there are distinct differences, what is emphasized, things like that. But I'd like to take this conversation across to Dr. Saravanan, because he's both writer, trainer, not both, but writer, trainer, multiple selves there, multiple persona, and translator, something which we are not going to reveal immediately, but it's a very important text for a very big publisher, again, across the ocean. So, Doctor, could you share one or two examples of difficulties? In fact, at the heart of all translation is failure, let's admit it. And I think it was Ramanujan who said, I never finish a translation, I can only abandon it. Right? Okay. Doctor, please share your experiences. Thank you.
Okay. Textbook Corporation has taken up the translation project, and we are working with Mini Madam for more than 8 years. So generally there is a saying in English, so which is a good translation. If a translation is equally criticized by the writer, editor, as well as the reader, then it is a good translation. Actually, Madam will tell, what a scopeless translation. Madam only give the translator name. We will fix the translator. After reading that, what the hopeless translation, I am editing every line by line, Madam will criticize. Then reader will criticize, it is not last, we are reading in Tamil, it has not come up. Writer, if he knows English, if not knowing English, we are happy. He cannot criticize that. If he knows English, what is this? Even Mini Madam edited, even you have fixed the writer, you took 18 months. After that, this is the output, but my friends are saying it is not like that. What is coming in the Tamil is not. Actually, translation is always an adjustment. I used to convince them that it is like a marriage, how a husband and wife lives with some sort of adjustment. Author and translator has to adjust. Okay, everything cannot be brought because we cannot read in every language. That's why the translation is there. This is an alternative way. With that adjustment, if you'll do, there is one conversation in the Chennai International Book Fair with Mini Madam and myself and Ambai Madam was there. I quoted the same example. The translation is always like a marriage. We have to both husband and wife are adjusting. The author and the translator has to adjust. Immediately, Ambai Madam asked me, she is a feminist, who is the husband, who is the wife? Either author or translator, who is the husband, who is the wife? That is the difference. So sometimes based on the popularity of the authors, they have to live, or based on the popularity of the translator, the author has to adjust. Because this translator will take me to the greater heights, then the author has to adjust. Or the translator is the new to the field. If it creates popularity by taking this author to that language, he has to adjust. So that is depends. So sometimes we face problem even translating the titles also. There is one two-page short story that was written by one popular Tamil writer, Ravi Kumar. So that was the story is a single letter, la. La means a special letter in Tamil. சிறப்பு இலக்கணமையா தமிழில் வரக்கூடிய லாங்கிறது. So there was a imaginary story. The government bans using that letter. You should not use la. If you use la, you will be marked as anti-national. So instead la, you have to use ja. That is Sanskrit ja. So that was the criteria. One boy, LKG boy, without knowing that the act was implemented, he has written la in his wall. So the police arrested him, that LKG boy. That was the story. So we wanted to translate that story. But translators are not willing to translate because it criticizes own language and anti-national and so many problems are there. So we wanted to translate. The writer also, we proposed in government we have to be fair enough to all the kind of ideologies we have to, because it's a government project, all kind, we have, our advisory committee is there, they will suggest these are all the stories you have to take up. So we will, then my role is to convince the editor and the translator. So we have to find the translator. Then they will not directly tell the reason why they don't want to take that. They will tell the indirect reason because it is a minor thing between the languages. So we want to don't translate this. Or la is a Tamil letter. How the other people will understand this? Even we cannot give you a title to this story like that. Then we have to find the solution. The title was given as unique letter. The title I proposed, 2 to 3 days I thought what title could be given, then unique letter. Then we convinced and we did translation. Sometimes the translator himself is a challenge. When we translated for German language some selected stories, one particular translator said, I can't translate this person, this person, this person, because I don't like their writings. So we signed the agreement with the German publication for translating these 20 stories. According to my ideology, I won't translate these 3, A, B, C, D. 4 people he cancelled. But we cannot do that. Then German publisher particularly wants that 4 stories very particularly. If you remove that 4 stories, I will file the case against you. So then we convinced that madam was very strong. No, it is against my ideology. I have my own preferences. I came to the project only whatever is coming to my mind, which is I like, that only I can wholeheartedly translate. Which is against my ideology, I cannot translate. Madam, as a translator, you can have ideology, but it's a profession. You can how to do that. Right? But he refused. Then we find out a solution. It can be translated by 2 translators. For those 4 stories, we fixed another translator and we brought out that book in German language. Like that, we are facing, not only in translation, in fixing translators also we are facing problems. This is my experience. There are so many experiences are there. There are 1 or 2.
Every time my book published in English, and one of my friends, read my novel in Tamil and English. No, then they got, Salma, the translation is worst. The Tamil, what a lovely story, but you are written, but they are spoiled that originality. Then I said, okay, can you translate next novel of mine? No, I could not. But this is the happening. But other one thing, my novel translated in Armenian language or Galician language, who knows what happened to that novels. But what kind of people we are having, how they are working very hard to translate our work. This is more important one thing. And so many books translated, so many novels translated in other languages. But these days, we could not find out more translators. Very less translators in Tamil to English we are having. Really, this is also a problem, no? Our books, I have to wait long time for find it, finish my work. That is always a problem, no? Only few translators we are having. That's
One of the things that comes out from what Salma said just now also, when you're being translated to languages you yourself don't know. So there needs to be trust between the writer and the translator. One of the things that Sharvan's also talking about, husband-wife, whatever you want to call the relationship, it doesn't matter to me. The thing is there should be trust between the two. If there is no trust, then the project fails automatically. The writer should trust the translator. The translator should be trusted by the readers. If the readers don't trust the translator, again it's gone. The translation fails. But you can't predict it. But this is what you work towards, establishing that trust, right? And one of the ways I tell people, how do you work towards that? What are you faithful to? I think as anybody who wants to translate, you should be faithful to your reading of that work. You should be faithful to your interpretation of that work. If you're faithful to that, you're faithful to the writer. Because you're the reader. You're the first reader of, in a sense, therefore, of your creator of your translation. Before you are the creator of a translation, you're the reader of that text. And if you're true to that reading, it'll work. So what Saran said about how a translator refused to translate, I can understand the translator's position, I must tell you that. Because as a translator, very often, not me, but even I do, is that when people translate, they actually first read works before they decide to translate. Before they decide to say something. So with that, I leave this because yes, if I don't like a particular work, why would I translate it? I would not be faithful to my own reading, right? If I try to translate in such a way that everybody likes the book, people get angry with me sometimes saying, you didn't translate my work. I can't tell them because I didn't like it. But that's the truth.
Yeah, the translator is setting out. A translator is about a reader becoming a writer. There's a lot of talk about translators becoming, should be invisible. That's a Western concept because in the West, in Europe, which set the norms, sadly, for us it is all retelling. We have so many Ramayanas, so many epics, all retold different regions. Their translation was seen as an inferior activity, as a secondary activity. Translator's name wasn't even mentioned. They were just paid and sent off. It's amazing because the whole culture, the whole language thing is set on the translation of the Bible in different European languages, translation of a translation of a translation. But coming to our situation, the training of translators is something that we have sadly missed. Now, fabulously multilingual culture in a civilization which has a very strong poetic tradition in so many languages, such a rich ethos, linguistic ethos. We've not talked about either, we have not, most universities are paying little or no attention, almost nothing for language development, language protection, language retrieval. And that is a great shame. One more generation, and we will probably even lose our languages. So, this is one of the things that language translators have to take up. I'm so happy translators are getting so much importance. But of course, it looks like fiction is king and the other things don't matter so much. I mean, without translation, we would lose our memories. You know, our entire history lies in so many documents, works, and it is translators who carry it across different languages and outside the country as well. Understanding the country depends largely on translation. This is one thing I want to say. The second thing is when you prepare for a translation, as Prasad said, I don't know who, I think it was Meenakshi Mukherjee who said when she set out to do her PhD on Jane Austen, she spent months in the British Library reading the newspapers of that time, reading the magazines that Jane Austen may have read, reading the popular novels of that time, just to get a sense of what made that writer. So researching your writer is also very much part of your translatorial responsibility and effort. And if your author is no more, that responsibility becomes even a greater burden.
I would like to add some good thing also. Sometimes authors will appreciate the translator. An example, Mr. Imayam is not here. So he appreciated the translator, Justice Prabha Sridevan. Madam Prabha Sridevan has translated I Am Alive Now. That is the famous book of Imayam. நான் இப்போது உயிரோடு இருக்கிறேன். It is about a young boy about the kidney transplantation. His kidney is failed. So they are talking about what has to be done for the kidney transplantation. The story moves about that. So at that time, Madam is a retired judge. He has rich vocabulary. But Imayam has written the story about the parents will be speaking about the problem of their child and all. But the boy who is 12-year-old, his language, his vocabulary is limited. He doesn't know what is happening, tomorrow he will live or not. But his conversation is very childish. Madam himself put into the shoes of the writer and he used the words what that young boy will use. That is the translator. So Imayam very much appreciated that part of the translator. Madam is a very good translator. She is rich, her vocabulary is so much, a retired judge. But while writing the dialogues of that young boy, he reduced to come to the lower level and used the words which is very common to the, which is available, which is the vocabulary of the 12-year-old child. That kind of empathy is required in part of a translator.
Very quickly, I'm sitting between two people who are involved with this project of taking Tamil to the world. It's a wonderful project, Many congrats again. You've been involved with translation for decades now, taking Indian texts across. And, Macmillan series is world famous. It became Oxford series, her series of translations. And so that she's been editing. So they take Tamil across the world, bring world into Tamil. It's a great idea, great project. But with somebody like me, actually, one of her first question was really towards how I use English in my translation. How do you do the dialogues? How do you do this? As Salma pointed out, her Tamil is very different from Imayam and Tamil, for example. Hers is more Islamic Muslim Tamil with a lot of Urdu words. And interestingly, my ancestors come from a Muslim-dominated Vellore, North Arcot district. So I knew, and of course I'm a Delhiite. I understood the language that she was using. For example, something like, you don't say, in Tamil, supposing you would say she died, she met with death or whatever. In her Tamil, it would be with moth. Moth we all understand. Now, how do you translate this? So that's the kind of question, right? How do you translate the dialogues, the look, caste, class, gender, community, and profession? All this plays a role in language. How do you do it? I do it simply because they take Tamil to the world. I'm saying Indian English has already gone to the world. So my world is India, and my language is Indian English. So I translate into Indian English, taking the text across to fellow Indians first. Fellow Indians are our world. We are a world. As Mini was saying, India is born in translation. Without translation, there would be no India. And that is, if India is fragmented now, it's because of lack of translation. We don't understand each other. We don't know each other. We know nothing about each other. And yet we are trying to function as one nation. So that's the difficulty. We need translation. And we need translation. And really, the work has been made easy for translators like me because Indian English has traveled the world. So I don't worry. Yeah, so I don't need to worry about, will my English be understood by Britishers? Let them try. They can read Rushdie, they can read me. Right? So, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That was a lovely point. Let them work a bit. In any case, the biggest market really is here. The greatest friends of translations of Indian writing, poetry, autobiography, fiction, they write here. We have about 5 minutes for the audience if anybody wishes to raise any questions. Yes? Mic, please. Let's have questions, please, and not statements.
Thank you. My name is Akshit. My question is, how difficult is it to handle the cultural differences between the language being translated and the language, for example, English is translating into? Because across those cultures, the values are different, the metaphors are different, the phrases, even the whole metaphysics, the spiritual, everything, all that is different. How do you handle that? Thank you.
Shall I say something and then you say something? The whole purpose of translation is to carry something across. See, the Bible translator, the most successful translation in the world is the Bible. When Eugene Nida set up the Bible Society sometime in the 60s, he told his translators, just get the message across. Now, how many Christians here or been through Christian institutions? Okay. The Lamb of God is a pastoral analogy, isn't it? There's a word, simile. Now in Greenland, in the land of Inuits, Eskimos, there's no such thing as a pastoral, the whole landscape is icy, and they've never seen a lamb. So when the translators were translating for that population, they made it the little seal of God, because they know what a seal is. Similarly in Peru, when Jesus, I think it's the Gospel of Matthew, he's hungry and he walks up to the fig tree. There's no figs there, so he curses it and says, may you shrivel up. There are no figs there, no fig trees, but there are banana plants. So he curses the banana plant. So you use different ways to get things across. Kodam and Sanjeev, why don't you give some examples?
I'm not going to give you examples, I'm just going to tell you. You're saying, how do you get the culture across? And we're speaking English to each other. How do you get your culture across in English to anybody at all, right? Even to your friends. Because remember, culture changes. Our practices changes from family to family. Forget every 15 miles. Forget every course. It changes from family to family. So you say, oh, you do it like this in your family, we do it like this, right? Everything changes. So there are things you take for granted. Shared knowledge that you have is not actually shared across with many people outside your family. So how do you speak this out in any language, even your own language, your own mother tongue? How do you make yourself understood to anybody? You're translating. You're translating all the time. We are all translating, even if we think we are monolingual. That's the point I'm making, right? So how do you get it across to a different language? At one day, it can be directly asked you think only of an English translator, but can be asked of anybody translating to any Indian language as well. My favorite example to my class, I'll just say this and we'll stop there because everybody else, we need one more question at least. I ask my students when we're doing an Indian English literature course, and everybody thinks, oh, this we know our India. I'll say, okay, I teach in North India, I used to teach in Delhi. So if you see a procession coming, and there are people dancing, there's a band playing, crackers being burst, what are you watching? They'll all say, wedding, Bharat. And I'll say, Tamil Nadu, it could be a funeral procession.
First of all, I really enjoyed your session. Thank you so much. My question is about technical translation and the inverse problem, like when you translate it from English to an Indian language. So I personally am a fitness educator, and during the pandemic, I had to write a lot of technical courses. And we were in budget constraints, and I was forced to translate my own work into Hindi. And this proved to be enormously challenging because there were no technical equivalents for certain scientific terms. And at the same time, we wanted to somehow get across the basic principles of what you're trying to do. And ultimately, on some level, I think we surrendered and translated more to English than actually Hindi. We just could not manage it. So I wondered what would be your take on this?
Generally, there are writers, bilingual writers. And for example, if you take in Tamil, A.R. Venkadachalamurthy, he will be writing both Tamil and English. Or Balakrishnan sir is there. He is a scholar both in Tamil and English. So first he wrote the book in English originally. So Journey of Civilization was originally written in English, but it was very difficult for himself to translate into Tamil. So he rewritten the book in Tamil. So it is very difficult. Even you are good at both languages, it is difficult to translate. It will not. He rewritten the Tamil book in Tamil. Entirely, it was at least 25 to 40% it will be different. Even Venkadachalamurthy book, you compare, Tamil will be different, English will be different. If you are good at both languages, also it is very difficult for a writer to translate. Entirely two different skills.
Thank you. We're completely out of time. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you, Jim. Thank you.